Hi. All right. I see we have a couple people here. Hi, Alec. How are you? Here, I'm going to unmute you real quick. All right.
Uh,
Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, nice to see you in person.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah. So we're going to wait just a little bit for other people to come. I've been hearing that a lot of students are interested in it, so I'm hopeful that more students are going to attend. And here they start coming.
Great, sounds good. Yeah, take whatever
Yeah,
time is.
absolutely. Um, so how's the newborn going?
He's going. Last night we had an exceptionally good night of sleep, which was
Hey.
a reprieve. So that was really good. Yeah, he gave us a 6-hour stretch followed by a 4-hour stretch. So
That's
that was
like perfect.
yes. We'll take it. Now, unfortunately, consistency does not seem to be something newborns are known for.
No,
So
no, not at all.
whether we can replicate that again tonight or not, I think is unclear, but fingers crossed.
Right. Yeah. At least you got one good night. I mean, that's
Right,
kind of the good way to
exactly.
look at
I'll take it better than no good nights.
it.
So
Right. Right. Exactly.
yeah, so Jack is doing really well. He's
Aw.
he's getting more and more interactive each day too, which is nice. They're
Yes.
as cute
Yeah.
as they are when they're just little blobs. They don't do a
Mhm.
whole lot, and he's doing more and more each day, which is fun.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I mean, I remember when my daughter was that age, and it was like, what do I do with this little person that's not really doing anything? And then all of a sudden, she
I
just sort
know.
of like came on, and it was pretty awesome.
It is funny, yeah. I mean, the what developmentally what must be going on in terms of the biology of their
Oh,
brains that
yeah.
they, all of a sudden like a switch gets flipped on, and it's like they recognize how to do something. Like he's Jack has become particularly interested in his mobiles. So we have one
Right.
above his crib and above his bassinet and things, and he's really very into those now, and is now
That's
figuring
cool.
out that he can reach up towards them and like swat
Hmm.
at them hand and things, which is kind of funny. So
That's cool. That's really, really cool. All right, I'm just taking notes on who else is here. It looks like we have kind of enough people to get started. Hi, Emily. For those of you who are just joining, we are going to do a Q&A session here with Alec, a 2007 grad. And so what I'd request, since we're doing a Zoom sort of Q&A, is that you leave your video and your audio muted. And if you do have a question, use the raise hand function, and then I will unmute you so that you can ask your question. So for the format, I've emailed Alex some questions that he can then answer. I'm going to start with 4 questions and then open it up for other folks to ask questions. But feel free to raise your hand at any time. And I'm hoping that we have a good conversation. So Alec, are you ready to go?
ready.
Awesome. Okay. So first of all, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, what did you study in school and what are you doing now?
Sure. So as you sort of previewed, I graduated from Beloit College in 2007. I was a political science major while I was there. After graduating from Beloit, I went and I worked on the 2008 Obama campaign, and I was
Mhm.
there from sort of day one all the way to the White House. So my
Wow.
first day on the job, I drove then Senator Obama from Chicago to Springfield for his his formal announcement that he was running for president. And my last day was in the Oval Office in the West Wing in Washington, D.C. So during the campaign, I was the executive assistant to David Axelrod, who was the chief campaign strategist, and then served in that same role for a time for First Lady Michelle Obama. After we had sort of gotten the White House stood up and things were situated, I left the White House to go to the Department of Justice, where I worked in the Office of Legal Policy, and then for the U.S. Marshals Service for about 3 years or so. And at that point, figured out that this was all great. I was having a great time. I was enjoying DC and things, but it was kind of time to take the next step in my career, and I needed a law degree in order to be able to do that. And I wanted to come back to the Midwest. I was born and raised in Wisconsin, and obviously went to school at Beloit and had lived in Chicago for a while, but at that point had been out in Washington, D.C. for several years. And I really wanted to come back to the Midwest. And so I used law school as sort of the excuse and ability to do that. So I went to University of Minnesota and went to law school for 3 years. From 2011 to 2014, I graduated. I clerked for a federal judge at that time then, here in the District of Minnesota for a couple of years. Then I worked in private practice for another couple. I did both civil litigation work, so sort of like contract disputes, one company suing another or people suing one another, but also a lot of criminal defense work and internal investigations. And then I left to where I'm currently at, which is I'm an assistant U.S. attorney for the District of Minnesota in our major crimes group. And so what we do is we prosecute primarily violent federal felonies. So murder, bank robbery, kidnapping, human exploitation cases, things like that. And I have always wanted this. Being an assistant U.S. attorney was sort of exactly what I wanted to do. I probably had some idea that was the job where I ultimately wanted to end up when I was at Beloit. It was certainly what I knew I wanted to do going into law school, and just kind of takes a while to weave your way to get there. But I'm very happy to be where I'm at now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. You've done such a great job of giving us a career overview. Could you tell us, what are some of the career skills that you had to use in order to get to where you are now? What were some of the things that helped you to get those positions?
So one, and I'll try and relate this as much to sort of my experience at Beloit as I can, because I think that'd be most helpful for people listening. But so one is your writing skills. I became a good writer when at Beloit. I mean, before I came to Beloit, I really had never been meaningfully challenged to be a good writer. My mom and dad are both very good writers, and so I was probably held to their standards in terms of my high school homework and things like that, which was helpful, but they weren't my teachers, and I had never really had constructive feedback on my writing before I came to Beloit. And at least in my experience, my 4 years at Beloit were sort of writing boot camp, and it was great. I came out leaps and bounds better in my writing than when I came in. And when it came time, and I could use the writing skills that I had came in handy while I was on the campaign, and certainly while I was working for the Department of Justice and the Marshals Service after. But where it really came in was law school and after. I mean, so much of the legal profession is about writing, and being a good writer, having good foundational writing skills, it has been just absolutely key for me in basically every position that I've held, and certainly in the one I'm currently in. And my foundation was laid at Beloit. The other one is the ability to communicate, I guess I'll call it effectively, and I know that that's kind of a broad way of putting it, but in every job that I've held, it's not a cubicle job, right? I mean, you are interacting with people every single day, and your work, a large portion of the work that you get done is in your interactions with others, and being able to both communicate your position efficiently and effectively while listening to somebody else and being able to understand what it is that they're trying to get at and what they're trying to get done has been just absolutely critical for my career, and it continues to be to this day. And I think that communication work, it began for me at least a lot in the Beloit, in the classroom style at Beloit. Small classes where discussion and interaction with both the professor, but also, you know, your classmates, your fellow students, people outside the classroom, your friends and things. I mean, the ability to interact and meaningfully engage in those environments, it's an exact translation to what you're doing in the work world, right? And in fact, I think I continue to be startled by how many people sort of lack those fundamental skills, whether they be writing or communication. If you can come out from an undergrad program and feel like you're a good, solid writer and you're able to express yourself well and meaningfully listen to somebody else and take in what they're saying, you're already sort of shockingly far ahead of much of the rest of the population, which is an unfortunate commentary probably on our society, but is a good commentary on Beloit and sort of what it's preparing you to do.
Okay, awesome. And I would love to build on that a bit, because I hear that a lot from students or from young alums, that, you know, that communication and that writing, they kind of took it for granted while they were in Beloit, because we're all in this bubble of everybody writes really well and everybody has to do 25-page papers and everybody does group assignments. So I'd love to build on that a little bit more. In what ways did you use those skills both inside and outside of the classroom? Because obviously we have a good classroom experience, but what were some of the ways that you practiced that writing or that effective communication in your non-classroom work?
So I was really involved with student government while I was at Beloit, and I certainly think that the communication piece of what I was, you know, the way that I was interacting with professors, my classmates, my friends, and things in the classroom, I liked that didn't really seem all that different from how we were interacting with each other outside of the classroom. And I think that showed itself in student government. And, you know, the idea of being able to not only advocate for a position, which requires you to be a good communicator and to craft an argument, present it in a meaningful way, and then continue to press forward with it, but you also have to be willing to be receptive to that from somebody else, right? Like, so other people will have other positions, maybe ones that you agree with, maybe ones that you don't, but your ability to critically listen to what they're saying, know what it is that they're trying to get at, and then to have a way to sort of formulate your response, how you're going to then interact with that person, that was really something that that student government helped out a lot with. And obviously, since I sort of did a tour of duty in politics, there was some, you know, direct overlap there. But, you know, so much I think of what people oftentimes consider to be politics is actually just interacting with people who have different ideas than you, right? Or a different way of approaching something than you do. And that's the workplace. I mean, no matter where you are, so long as there is somebody else working there, you're going to at some point in time have friction or a difference of opinion or something like that. And if you've prepared yourself to be able to effectively deal with that in a way that certainly doesn't alienate people, but also is true to yourself and what's meaningful to you, you're going to be setting yourself up to do well. So student government was definitely helpful. I wrote a few pieces for the student newspaper while I was there. Those were also good. I enjoyed doing that. That was fun. I also played. I played on the intramural frisbee team, And I was not very good, just to be clear about that, but it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the team aspect of that. And I think whatever it is, right, that you enjoy doing or that's meaningful for you, if you can do it in the context of working collaboratively with another group of people, that is going to help you in whatever career path you go down. The ability to work with others sort of towards a common goal, whatever that is obviously incredibly important. I mean, it's so obvious. I think a lot of times people take it for granted. What I liked about like intramurals at Beloit or something like that, if it's outside the classroom, it's outside the grading experience or something like that, it's easier sometimes to get on the same page with everyone, right? I mean, if what you're trying to do is win the Frisbee game, right? Well, that's an easy goal for all people to pull towards in one way or another. There isn't the sort of competition that can sometimes come up when you're in the classroom environment, or even then, you know, the workaday world where some people are trying to climb that ladder and they might be trying to climb over each other to do it. If you're able to develop the skills of learning how to act as a team when the stakes aren't quite so high and they're also much more attainable and right there, it'll help you when things are more complicated and difficult later on.
Awesome. So what I like about what you're talking about is that you're touching on a lot of our learning outcomes that we talk about at Beloit. So we talk about them in terms of integrated learning outcomes, things that we do both inside and outside of the classroom. So you've already talked about effective communication. You've already talked about creative problem solving. You've already talked about productive collaboration. But the one that I would bet my career on is professional agility. So obviously you've worked in a lot of different contexts with a lot of different types of people. How would you say that professional agility sort of benefited your career?
You know, when I was at Beloit, I had, and I don't know where I came up with this idea, right? I don't know. It's not like anyone told me that this was the way things were going to be or something like that. But somehow I had gotten this idea in my head.
We've lost your audio.
Uh-oh, is it back now by chance? Let me see, hold on just one second.
There we go.
We're back, okay.
We're back,
good?
yeah, yes, we're good. You'll have to start that whole thing over.
All right, so when I was at Beloit and getting ready to graduate and things, I think that I had the idea in my head that, you know, what happens after graduation is that you sort of enter your career and you're at the company, essentially at the position where you're going to be then for the next like 40 years of your life, right? And I don't know how I developed that idea, right? It wasn't like that had been told to me by somebody, but it was my perception of things. And of course it was totally off basis, right? I mean, that's not the way.
We lost you again.
Lost me again, okay.
There you go, now you're good.
All right, sorry.
Sorry.
Internet connection here or something like that. So I think that professional agility is it begins with the understanding that, did you lose me again?
No, I'm good. I'm replying to a chat. Sorry about that.
Sure. I think professional agility is it begins with the understanding that the career that you have, your career is a trajectory, right? It's a progression. For very, very few people is the job that they take when they first graduate going to be the job that they have at the same company as when they retire, right? I mean, that's just not the reality that we live in anymore. But to be able to progress through your career requires a couple of different things. One, I think, is patience, right? And that's hard. When I came out at 22, you know, I was rearing to go. I was ready, right? Like I was excited. I had enjoyed my time at Beloit. I felt very empowered and like I knew quite a bit and could be a good asset to a lot of organizations, and that I wanted to do all of those things. And so I thought that I was sort of ready to dive in at the highest levels. And of course, that reflecting back on that now, that's not really true, right? I couldn't have realized it then, but I do realize it now. And so you have to be willing to do the climb, and the climb takes time. right? And so be patient with yourself as you go through, and be patient with other people too. You still have a lot to learn after leaving Beloit. I mean, you have a great education upon leaving Beloit. Your fundamental foundational knowledge is excellent. It's really good. And in fact, it's going to be much higher than a lot of the other people that you work with, including some of the people who may be your superiors, right? But what you don't have at that time is a lot of experience applying that knowledge and those skills in the quote unquote real world, right? And that's where you have a lot to learn and where you can learn a lot from other people. And so just be prepared to do that and understand that those are the things that you're really, I mean, in addition to, you of course always want to keep learning, right? About, you know, whatever it is that your passion or your interest is, but you have a lot to learn about what it means to be a worker. Right? And so be prepared to give yourself the time and space to do that, and to accept from other people that they may have a lot to teach you that isn't, you know, sort of book knowledge, so to speak, but it's more about how to take all of the book knowledge that you have and effectively apply it in the work world, in the position that you're in. The other thing that I would say is embrace the flexibility that you have, that most of us have when we're in the position where we're graduating from Beloit. I mean, most people probably aren't married at that time. Most probably don't have kids. I know I'm not speaking to everyone. I understand that. But your life is not tied down in the same ways as it will be later on for many people, right? You can geographically move about the country much more easily. You don't have a house full of crap that you have to move around with you, right? And as somebody who now has a house full of crap, that's something that I'm acutely aware of now. You're also able, you know, you can take a position because it's a great opportunity, even if it's not going to pay you a huge amount of money, right? And so allow yourself to do those things, right? Like, I'll say this position that I'm thinking about taking, it's not going to make me wealthy. It's not exactly what I want to be doing ultimately with my career. But here's what it does do. It gets me a step closer to that goal, right? I know that if I do this for whatever period of time, right, that I'm going to acquire this skill, I'm going to make these connections, and that's going to allow me to make my next move, which is even one click closer to what I really ultimately want to be doing. And it's okay to take, you know, this takes years, quite frankly, I think, for a lot of people to sort of figure all of that out. So have the patience with yourself, not to rush yourself in that process. I mean, when I was graduating from Beloit, I had a pretty good idea that I wanted to go to law school, but I was not totally certain about that. And frankly, I think the reason for a lot of lawyer jokes and a lot of unhappy lawyers is because they went to law school because they didn't know what else to do, right? They had gone through undergrad, they knew they were good at taking tests and that they were pretty smart. Maybe they had an idea that they liked to argue or something like that. But those aren't really reasons to become a lawyer, right? Like that's not going to be a fulfilling career for you. And going to law school or really any other, you know, secondary education or, you know, additional education program, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of commitment from you. And that's not to say don't do them, but it's to say be as knowledgeable and sure as you can before committing yourself to those. And the same thing goes for a career path, right? You know, when you're in a position and you've been in that position for a bit, especially early on, think to yourself, okay, what's good and what's bad about where I'm at right now? What would I like to see different? And you know, your 20s certainly are sort of this great time to be able to experiment with all that sort of stuff and to accumulate all this knowledge about yourself and what it is that you want to be doing. And so I think as long as you can say to yourself, I keep taking small steps forward towards where I ultimately want to go, and I have some sense of where that ultimate end place is. As long as that's the reality, then, you know, give yourself some credit for what you're doing. You're doing a good job then. and you're really, you're doing all the right things, and but keep motivated, right? Like keep being willing to take that next step. I think that would be my advice.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that when I advise undergrads, that can be a hard concept to get, that your 20s are still going to be part of your development. I'm certainly past my 20s, and I still find that I'm developing myself in my career, even though I know what it is I want to do. And so
Yeah.
when we talk about career development, we're talking about really the development of you as a person, and how that integrates with your career.
Yeah.
So I've been hearing over chat that the sound connection is me and not you. So I apologize for that. But we're lucky because now it's time for some questions. So I did hear from some folks that they couldn't find the raise hand function. If you could find the raise hand function, raise your hand. Otherwise, send me a reaction. The reaction button should be on the right-hand side. Oh, and I've got someone who has raised their hand. So I'm going to unmute Maggie here for a second.
I'm sorry,
right.
I thought when you were asking us to raise our hand, you just wanted an example. I don't have a question right now.
Okay. Well, Maggie did a great job of raising her hand, and now I'm going to mute her again. Thanks, Maggie. All right. So everybody's been raising their hand. Okay. So who really has a question? It looks like Mez, you might have a question. Go ahead.
Hi, Alec. So my question is for someone who's aspiring to go to law school. I've been told that 2 classes I should take while I'm at Beloit are Latin and logic. I'm in the logic class right now. I'm really enjoying it, actually, but I wanted to know your thoughts on those 2 classes and any other classes you would like to recommend.
Yeah, so good questions. I would say your logic class is definitely worthwhile. That's a great class. Logical reasoning is something that, while maybe not all lawyers stay true to throughout their careers, it is a foundational part of the law school experience, all the way from the LSAT that you'll take through the bar exam at the end of your time in law school. So that's an excellent class. Latin, I think there's a lot of great reasons why to take Latin, but I don't know that your aspiration to be a lawyer is a good one. Yes, there are a lot of Latin phrases in the law, but I will give you this little hint and insight. Most lawyers and judges and people in the law don't actually know what the hell those are. Like they don't understand. They haven't taken Latin. They all Google them and look up the translations there. So unless you're passionate about Latin for some other reason, that I wouldn't take that class for the purpose of making yourself a better attorney or a better aspiring law student. In terms of classes that I would encourage you to take, if you can take anything that causes you to have to think critically about the ideas of fairness and justice in society, will be really important. I mean, they're going to be repeated to some extent, or certainly expanded upon in law school, but they are the foundation of what our legal system is built around. And so any class at Beloit that explores those ideas, I think you would find to be really helpful and something that can help you to decide what type of law it is that you are interested in studying and practicing. And that's sort of the next step. I think a lot of people start off thinking, okay, I want to go to law school, but the law is a big thing, and what it means to practice in the law is really different for a lot of people. There's a lot of little facets and sideshows in it that people can go down, and you should explore to find out what pieces of it are what you're passionate about.
Awesome. Thanks, Alec. All right, so we have Grace who's raised her hand. So I'm going to unmute you. Grace, go ahead.
So I'm a senior in high school, and I'm currently between 2 schools, and I just wanted to know what you thought about how Bradley prepared you for law school.
I think that Beloit did
Beloit.
Yeah, it's all right. Beloit did an amazing job preparing me for law school. Like I said, the writing is really it's a huge part of being a practicing attorney, and it's interesting because what most students in your position or coming out of undergrad are thinking about with law school is the LSAT, which is of course a Scantron-based, multiple choice exam for the most part. It has very little writing at all in it, and that's really not representative of what being a lawyer is about, or even what the law school experience is about. Let me tell you what you don't take in law school is many multiple choice exams until all of a sudden you graduate from law school and you take the bar exam, and then all of a sudden we're back to multiple choice. It's a very strange progression of things. So Beloit's focus for me on writing really armed me to do well in my career as a lawyer. I also think that the emphasis in basically every class that I took at Beloit on critical thinking and the ability to reason through arguments was also extremely helpful. And those are more directly applicable, I think, to things like the LSAT, which you have to go through in order to get into law school. I mean, critical thinking, logical reasoning, those were elements that were present in basically every class that I took at Beloit. And I think that because Beloit, as a small liberal arts school that has been doing this and doing it really well for a long time, in educating people to be critical thinkers and to be, to be able to have to formulate a coherent idea, articulate it well, and convince other people to come to their side. I mean, really whatever you're doing in life is going to involve that in some way or another. And I felt like Beloit's classes prepared me to do that in a really good way.
Awesome. Thanks, Alec. Who else has a question? I'm not seeing any raised hands right now. Maggie's got a question. All right. All right, go ahead, Maggie.
So for real this time, I'm also a senior in high school, but I will be attending Beloit College. I just wanted to know what sort of events or programs there were to sort of prepare you for law school or to show you that sort of option outside of just classes.
Sure. So I took, I took my LSATs a few years removed from Beloit, and I took one of those prep classes. I'm trying to think back to it now. I think it was the Kaplan course, but it doesn't, I don't think it really matters. They all, function on basically the same principles. Look, standardized testing, good, bad, ugly, probably all three, right? It's a reality of getting into a good law school and all of the benefits that come along with that. So I would recommend a preparatory class. No matter how many classes you've taken about law, logical reasoning, writing, those sorts of things while at Beloit, the LSAT is an animal unto itself, and you will only benefit by doing one of those prep classes. It forces you to really buckle down and learn the game that the LSAT is, and it is a game. That's really at the end of the day what it is. And if you come to understand not just the rules, but sort of how it's played, you will do much, much better on the test. And having a good LSAT score, in addition to all the other things you should be doing, will only benefit you. But to talk about some of those other things, I will say that I think my ability to get where I am in my legal career, I'm only just over 5 years into my legal career at this point. And a lot of people have asked me sort of how I managed to get where I am in that short period of time. Now, of course, that doesn't take into account the fact that, I'm 35 years old, right? It's not like this was my first job. These were my first jobs or something like that. And so I think the experiences that you accumulate while you're at Beloit will really go to inform people. It will show them that you can handle responsibility, that you're a multifaceted person who can work well, out in the quote unquote real world. And they will give you responsibility and opportunity as a lawyer because of that. And so if you want to, spend a summer, as a clerk at a, district attorney's office or a federal defender's office, or working with the immigration system, whatever it is in the law that is interesting to you or might be interesting to you and you want to learn more about it, create those opportunities for yourself outside of the classroom and get that sort of hands-on experience, because it's not only going to make you a more attractive candidate for law schools, it will make you a more attractive candidate for the jobs that come after law school, and it will also help you to know more about yourself and what you're interested in with the law, and that's important because look, I mean, if your passion is getting up in front of a court or a jury and making your argument and things, you don't want to get siloed in law school into being a corporate lawyer who's drafting contracts all day, and vice versa is true as well. So I would recommend the LSAT prep course when it comes time for you to be applying and thinking about that. But leading up to it, I would take every advantage of the internships, the job shadowing, the experiential learning that's part of being at Beloit to make yourself not only a great law school candidate and a better lawyer in the future, but also to help you to understand what it is that you want to get out of the law.
And I'll just put a plug in and emphasize what you're saying about the out of classroom experiences, because you didn't go directly into your law school career. And oftentimes those early out of the classroom experiences make you attractive to all employers, so that you can have something on your resume outside of just your GPA and your classwork that can really demonstrate that you know how to work with people, that you know how to communicate, that you know how to problem solve, all of that good stuff. So it looks like Grace has a question. I'm going to unmute you, Grace. All right, go ahead.
So in terms of majors, I really have a passion for being an English major, and I also have a passion for philosophy, but I was wondering if you think that a pre-law minor or a major that has something to do with the law is necessary for law school, or if it helps with law school?
Definitely not. No, I don't think that those are prerequisites at all. If you are passionate about philosophy and being an English major, those are great things. I mean, you're going to learn how to write, you're going to learn how to think critically and to analyze arguments. Those are the things that you need to be able to do coming into law school. And so I would not be concerned at all about that. I think that you should pursue your passions, and so long as you do so with the understanding that if law school continues to be sort of an ultimate goal of yours and where you want to go, well then yes, I mean, you should, in addition to the English classes and the philosophy classes that you're taking, you should take logical reasoning, you should take a course on justice and fairness and things like that, but don't feel that you have to do something as significant as craft your major around the idea that only one subset of majors heads to law school and is successful. That's definitely not true. I have friends and colleagues from law school and currently who have a really eclectic background, educational background. The federal judge that I clerked for here in Minnesota, Susan Richard Nelson, she was a religion and music major in undergrad. And so, it just goes to show that you can be very successful as a lawyer and have done any number of things in your undergrad career.
Awesome. And I'll just put in a plug for philosophy majors. One of our philosophy professors, Matt Tedesco, he likes to say that the philosophy major tends to have the highest entrance rates into law school, and then also the highest LSAT scores. So philosophy is actually a pretty darn good major for that. So I have two
take classes with Matt Tedesco. He's excellent.
Yeah, he is fantastic. So I have one person who's raised her hand, Vanessa. I'm going to unmute you, Vanessa. Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, I'm a senior in high school as well, and I'm not like the best like reader and writer and stuff, but was college like going there and stuff, was it able to like help you grow like academically?
Yes, Vanessa. Look, it can be intimidating coming in, I think, to undergrad because, so look, I grew up in a small town in South Central Wisconsin. You know, my graduating class was less than 200 people, and that's only because in these rural farming communities, they have to, you know, bring in people from like a 60-mile radius around the school in order to have enough kids to justify a school, right? So I was not prepared when I came to Beloit for the caliber of student that was going to be there. I was blown away, and I thought, I am just going to get cremated by these people. They are amazing writers. They're incredibly articulate. Everyone seems to have just a foundation of knowledge that is leaps and bounds beyond where I'm at. And look, that was really intimidating. And I will tell you, the first couple of months were kind of hard. All right, I wrote my first few papers. I got them back. There was a lot of red ink on them. And that was hard for me because in my small school where I had gone before, you know, in high school, you know, I was the standout, right? Like I had never, you know, I always just got A after A after A on everything, but it's because I wasn't really being held to much of a standard at all. And so it was this huge adjustment to come to Beloit for me. But Beloit did all of this in a way that was incredibly constructive. It was not about beating you down and saying, oh my God, you know, you got that C, I guess you're just going to have to pull it, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and, you know, see it the next test or the next paper. That's not the way that it happened at all. It was extremely collaborative. And I was amazed, and I am amazed to this day about how much Beloit dedicated in its resources and time, and especially the professors, to making sure that students felt supported as well as challenged, right? Because without those two things being in tandem, I think you sort of set yourself up for a disaster either way. And Beloit has it figured out how to push their students to get where they need to go if they want to be successful people in whatever field it is that they ultimately end up in. And it requires pushing. I mean, you're gonna get pushed, it happens, but they do it in a way that you understand what's going on and you feel like it is about building you up as opposed to breaking you down, right? So I understand your concerns, Vanessa, and you know, I had a lot of the same sort of trepidation coming in, but don't worry, Beloit is a really good environment to build all of these skills, and you're going to. I mean, look, gosh, if I could only have compared myself coming into Beloit and then myself at the end of my first year, I think there was an enormous difference there. And then certainly at the end of my time when I graduated, I mean, it was just night and day different. So you can look forward to having all of these skills and experiences provided to you and your opportunity to build them in a really collaborative, supportive environment. And look, if anyone's on this call is sort of undecided about where they want to go and to school and things, I will say that I think that Beloit as a small liberal arts school can provide that sort of environment in a way that huge state you know, university systems simply can't. I mean, look, at some level, it just comes down to a question of numbers, right? And you can't provide that same sort of environment and experience where it is about really getting to know a person and what they're trying to do and the weaknesses and strengths that they have and how to develop the strengths and mend the weaknesses, right? You can't do that if you're dealing with 300 students at a time, right? I mean, it's just not possible for one professor to be able to do it. But at Beloit, you have this much more intimate environment. And so I found that to be really comforting. And I'm not going to say it was easy because it wasn't, but it was really doable. And it was, I think, very successful. So understand that you've got the concerns, but don't worry, you're going to the right place to be able to work on all of that and to do it in a fun and collaborative environment.
Great, thank you. So Aris has a phrase, so I'll put you on. All right, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Arissa. I'm a junior here at the college, and so I'm preparing to take the LSAT this summer. But I'm also McNair. McNair really pushes students to go to graduate school, but it's more like PhD or MA programs. But I also want to go to law school, so I've been looking into JD PhD programs. So do you, like, in your everyday work setting, I guess, do you encounter people with like both degrees, or is it something that people usually get when they're done practicing law, or like, I don't know.
Yeah, I know a few people who have joint degrees, JDs, and typically the people who I run into are people who have both a Juris Doctorate, a law degree, and also an MBA, a business degree. I have not, trying to think about it, I do not know many JD PhDs, but that may be a function. Well, actually, I can tell you one area where I do know a lot. Expert witnesses. There are quite a few experts out there, experts in things such as, polygraphs and DNA evidence and, ballistics and things like that, who have both a law degree and either a master's or a PhD in maybe one of the physical sciences, psychology, something like that. What I would say about those is here's the benefit of them. If you have more education, more degrees, you keep your options open. So if you go to law school and while you enjoy some things about learning about the law and what you've experienced there, the people you've met and things, but you just think, God, I don't really want to practice as an attorney, like a licensed attorney out there practicing law. Having a different degree will allow you a lot more options to be able to pursue something else that is maybe legally related but doesn't require a law license. Because the problem with having just a JD and wanting to do something else is that a lot of people, for whatever reason, they look at the JD and they just assume, well, why isn't this person practicing law, right? Like they're overqualified for this research position or this teaching position or something like that. And of course, that's not true by any means, right? But it is the framework in which we're working within. So if you have a degree in addition to your Juris Doctorate, it can give you a lot more career flexibility. Now, I will warn you though, I mean, especially if you're looking at a JD PhD program, that is a ton of school. That is a astronomical amount of being in school. And so you need to be prepared to do that, right? And understand that coming out the other end of that, you are going to be, a lot of other people are going to be sort of further down their career progression than you are because they're going to have had multiple jobs at that point. And that's not to say that you shouldn't do it, right? It's just that you need to make sure that you understand sort of the path that you're setting yourself on when you're looking at not just one higher education degree, but two of them and the amount of time that it takes to get both.
All right, so Tegan has a question, so I'm going to unmute Tegan. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tegan. I'm also a high school senior, and I was wondering, I still don't really know what I want to do, and law is kind of something that's been starting to get on my radar. And before I kind of dismissed it, thinking that, I want kind of a hands-on job. I thought maybe I'd feel a little bit like isolated in the paperwork, and now I'm just kind of wondering, I've met lots of cool people who've done law, and I'm wondering what you really do every day and how that feels as a career.
Yeah, Tegan, you're exactly right that in the law there are places within it where you can get sort of lost in the paperwork and be in your office all day and not really see a lot of other people or interact with them very much. And look, for some individuals, that's what they want, right? And that's fine. I cast no judgment on that. But for me personally, that wasn't what I was interested in. But fortunately, the law is a very big thing, right? There are a lot of different facets to it. And there are a lot, like the section that I'm in, where I actually spend, the very little of my time isolated by myself. I am working with my agents on investigations pretty much constantly. I'm working with defense counsel on the cases that we've charged out. I'm talking to and working with defendants, the people that we've charged and are prosecuting, the judges, my colleagues in my office. There are 46 of us who are criminal AUSAs, and it is incredibly collaborative. So, I'm running ideas by them all the time. Right now, because frankly, I'm still young and early in my career, so I still have a ton to learn. I feel like every day I'm learning something new. And most often, the way that I learn it is not because I went on Westlaw and did some legal research or something. It's that I first went down the hall and talked to one of my colleagues who's been doing this job for 20 years. And they gave me sort of that foundation, right, to start and said, oh, this is, that's an issue. You've identified the issue. Here's some things that you're going to need to think about related to it. You might take a look at this case. And I tried a similar issue 5 years ago, and let me dig up some of the paperwork and things that I did related to that. So it's very collaborative, and I do not feel like I am just stuck in my office all day or something like that. In fact, if anything, sometimes we're running around too much. You feel like you need a second to get all the paperwork done because it's just piling up there on your desk. So I think that my advice to you would be is that if you continue to look into the law as a profession, right, be true to yourself in whatever the field is that you're going into. You should understand sort of what careers are available within it. So again, I'm using the law just because this is what I'm most familiar with, but being a corporate attorney, somebody who drafts contracts, helps close business deals, that sort of thing, that is a much more office-focused, paperwork-driven career path. And so if that's what you like, and then gravitate towards that. But understand that if that's not what you like, then you need to look for something else, right? And only if, in looking at a broad field like the law or politics or something like that, you say, God, I just don't see what the position is within that field where I could see myself being personally happy. I'm interested in it, right? Of course you are. You're taking classes about it. Maybe it's your major, that sort of thing. But if you can't see where you can land within that field, that should raise a red flag for you. And the red flag, all it means is that you've got to do a little bit more research about this. You need to talk to more people who are in their careers in those fields. You need to talk to your professors, to the career services folks at the college, and let them know, this is what I'm interested in this subject or this area, but I can't see where I'm gonna fall. Where is the career that will be personally fulfilling for me within that area? And because look, you can change a lot about your career and what's going on, but you should remember that there are certain things about yourself and who you are as a person that will not change, right? And if you are a person who just cannot be in an office for 10, 12 hours a day doing heavy duty, legal writing and paperwork and things, then being a corporate attorney probably isn't for you. But that doesn't mean being an attorney is not for you. So I hope that's helpful in some way.
That's some really good advice. Thanks. Just a follow-up question. I was wondering, if I'm interested in investigating more collaborative law and fields like that, what kind of fields would that be within the law?
Yeah, so there are a lot of areas. So collaborative law is interesting. I think that it is growing, probably not as fast as it should, but I suspect that it continues to be an area that we see more and more of, because the sort of normal confrontational adversarial style of conflict resolution that most of our legal industry is built around is probably not sustainable in the long term. So things that you want to look for, you want to get associated with and maybe shadow for a day a legal mediator. So this is, or they're sometimes called arbitrators. This is somebody, typically an attorney, maybe a former judge, but not always somebody who has a formal law degree, but most often. And this is somebody who the parties to a dispute hire in order to try and resolve this outside of the sort of formal legal, whatever their conflict is, they'd like to try and resolve it outside of the formal legal channel, which generally means suing one another and then having that dispute decided by a court. It's a fascinating career and one that I think is really interesting and unique within the legal system as it exists right now. Another group of individuals, so within family law, so this is things like divorces, adoptions, things like that. They have a lot of this sort of collaborative meeting where it is attorneys and their clients getting together without a judge or even necessarily a mediator or arbitrator present and trying to resolve the dispute on their own, right, without some third party being there. And as you can imagine, that can go both very well and very poorly. And it is a totally unique approach to legal work, because typically, if you are adversaries and you're butting heads and fighting with each other, sitting down across the table with one another without some third party in the room is like the number one no-no. It's like what you don't do, right? And so there are these little subsets of the law where that is starting to happen more and more. And so finding attorneys that practice in those areas and maybe getting a chance to speak with them or shadow them for a day might give you a sense of sort of where the career opportunities are there and also really what that practice involves.
Awesome. So looking at the time, we have about 10 more minutes left, and I've got 2 more questions. So I'm going to go to Mez. Come on. All right, Mez, you're there.
My question is, I'm someone who's very justice oriented, and I often find myself being very personally and emotionally involved in instances of injustice. And I want to integrate that passion into my professional career wisely. Without kind of ending up in situations where I'm not handling myself professionally. And so I wanted to know if you had any kind of like tips or stories or insight on like how to deal with that integration.
Yeah, wow. Look, passionate people tend to be drawn towards the law, right? People who have big personalities, big voices, big, you know, they are people who like to express themselves. It is a field that draws a lot of that sort of person in. So know that you are not the first individual to be thinking, boy, I'd like to be a lawyer, but I certainly don't want my passions and things to express themselves in a way that wouldn't be, you know, beneficial towards my career, towards my clients, or certainly inappropriate in some way. Look, I think that you give yourself some credit first and foremost, right? The very fact that you acknowledge that your emotions and passions will inevitably play a part in your career, it means that you have the emotional intelligence to recognize that. And if you have the emotional intelligence to recognize it, it's just the next step to be able to control them and channel them in the right way, right? And so I think that what I have tried to do in the law, one thing that you should be aware of is that you are uniquely positioned to do something about injustice. And I think that that's what draws a lot of people in. But what you also have to recognize is that although you are positioned to do something about it does not always mean that you will be successful. And it also means that you will be faced with and confronted with a lot of injustice. You are going to see it all the time, right? And that can be hard on a lot of people and frustrating to a lot of people. And so I think that for a key for lawyers is to always be doing this sort of welfare check with themselves of saying, you know, do I still feel like the job that I'm doing is a net good, as opposed to something that is draining on me and is detracting from my emotional state, my physical well-being, things like that, and then to act on it. If everything's okay and the ship is all even keel and you're doing well, great, keep chugging along, good for you. But if it's not, that's okay, and there are things to be done about it that don't involve having sort of a meltdown in an inappropriate situation or something like that. I think that there are a lot of lawyer support groups out there where people are able to talk to both mental health professionals and also other lawyers about, you know, the sort of things that they see and deal with. Sometimes you will need to make a career alteration based on what you're coming across. I will never forget. So my father was an attorney, and he was sort of a small town lawyer. So he was a jack of all trades. You know, one day it was a real estate deal that he was helping with. The next day he was drawing up a contract for somebody. The next day he was suing someone for breach of contract. And he also did some family law work. And I will never forget when I was probably 8, 9 years old, somewhere around there, my dad came home one day and was very obviously shaken. I mean, something bad had happened. And I remember him announcing, I won't do another family law case. I can't handle these cases and what happens to the kids in those cases. And so he hired another attorney for his firm to do nothing but the family law work. And from that day forward, he never did another family law case, never took another one. And so, you know, give yourself the leeway to say, this just isn't for me. And I mean, usually this is a very narrow subset of what it is to be an attorney. And understand that it's okay to say that. You don't have to practice in every area. You don't have to take every case, and you know, and be self-aware when you start feeling like you're overwhelmed.
That's a great answer. Awesome. So we're going to give the last question to Grace. So Grace, I'm going to unmute you. All right, go ahead.
So this kind of connects to the last question. Do you think that, because I know that for me, I have a lot of different areas of law that I'm looking at. Do you think that law is a career where you kind of find your niche and a lot of people end up very happily in their niche? Or do you think a lot of people end up doing things that they don't want to do?
I think that the profession and the field in general is getting better about people ending up in careers and areas where they are happy and doing good work and doing it well. I will say, however, that we have a ways to go. This is a profession that unfortunately I think drew a lot of people in because they didn't, like I said earlier, they didn't really know what else they wanted to do. And it's a white collar profession that's well respected. And so they thought, well, I guess I'll be a lawyer, right? I guess I'll be a lawyer is a terrible, terrible reason to be a lawyer. Also, I think a lot of people believe that being a lawyer is a way to make a lot of money. And while certainly it is, you know, if you become a partner at a large law firm and you're doing that sort of work, I mean, you'll be paid well for what you're doing. But let me tell you, you can work much less and be better compensated in a lot of other fields than the law. So if you're coming into this for money, find something else to do, right? Like there are better ways to make money than being a lawyer. So if you set those things aside, and you get people who are able to say, I'm passionate about being a lawyer because they care about justice and fairness, or I really like the fact that it's about serving a client or an interest and advocating for that client or interest. Those are good reasons to become a lawyer. And then once you have that, then it's just a question about honing in on how to practice that interest. And that is what law school is about. That's what the early part of your career is about, is sort of finding the niche, finding the speciality, or finding the environment in which you're going to practice that's going to make you feel fulfilled and happy. And that will all happen, right? Especially if you stay conscious and cognizant of it, and that you keep working towards. You say, boy, I'm doing this currently, and I really like X about it, but I hate Y. And I see that this next position, I see this position over here is open, and it seems like I get to keep doing the good things, but get less of the bad. So I'm going to make that move. Keep doing that. Keep making those, have those sort of assessments with yourself. And as long as you're doing that, you will find your way into a position that works really well for you within the law.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to thank Alec for taking time today to talk with us. I'll give him a virtual round of applause. And so this ends our time here with Alec. If you're interested, Tegan applauded virtually, as did Emily. So if you are interested in learning more about this, certainly contact me at the Career and Community Engagement Center, and we can help you kind of learn more about careers in law and justice. But thank you, Alec, for talking with us today.
Absolutely. I'm really happy to have done it. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. And I would just put in a plug to anyone who's still here and listening. But, don't be afraid. If you're part of the Beloit network, access the Beloit network. I am here. Jessica can give you my contact information. I would be more than happy to keep answering questions for anyone who's interested. But one of the best things you can do is you try and figure out what it is that you want to do with your career, whether it's early on or later on. Use the alumni that Beloit has. We're all over the place in all geographic locations and all different sorts of fields. And I think you will come to find that a lot of people would be really interested in helping you land somewhere where you are happy and productive and doing all the great stuff that Beloit has prepared you to do. So don't hesitate to do that sort of thing. It's not an inconvenience. It's not a hassle. We want to help, and we want to be available.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm an alum as well, and I've spent my career benefiting from the help of alums and giving forward to alums as well. All right, so thank you so much for your time. I'll end the session here. And if you have questions or want to reach out, foxjs@beloit.edu is my email address. But y'all have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.